What's up, guys? Welcome to Real Time with Rukshan Fernando, the Wednesday night show. 9 p.m. on Wednesday night and also on Mondays at 9 p.m. Great to have you all joining in. Hopefully, we have a lot of interesting news to get through today. We've already got one of the regulars jumping in with a comment. So, Gap Media Oz, how you doing, mate? Thanks for jumping on. Good evening, mate. I'm really liking your setup. Keep up the great work, and I appreciate your patronage, Gap Media Oz. You've always come on these shows when it was Rukshan on X, and now when it's Real Time with Rukshan, you make sure you turn up and take part in the conversation. And that's one of the great things about this show that I do, guys. You are all a part of the conversation. Feel free to leave comments. They do appear on the screen as you type, but you can support the show through super chats. That's a great way to support what I'm doing with Rebel News Australia by supporting the news coverage that I do in a very casual manner. You don't want to make it too serious because all the networks do all the very serious news coverage. And yes, there's a lot of political commentators in Australia now as well, and everyone's talking about politics, which is great. But we need to keep it a bit more chilled out. So this is a chilled out news show. That's why it happens late at night at 9 o'clock for the insomniacs that can't sleep. And anyone else that wants to stay up and enjoy a casual chat as we get through some of the news stories from today. So if you're joining for the first time, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, follow if you're watching on X. This is simulcast on multiple platforms. So wherever you're watching, thanks for joining in, guys. And we've got a few more regulars jumping in as well. Montana Mio, hello, how you doing? And Wilson, good evening. Thanks for jumping on. We've got Harry says, I hope Victoria has a different party that wins. We will look at a little bit of Victorian politics. Jacinta Allen struggling with a lot of the attention on her around corruption that she doesn't want to have investigated, the CMFEU. And then we also had today news coming out that Victoria Police, the senior leadership, what's his name? The Chief Commissioner of Victoria Police, if he's going to have a meeting with the opposition, Labor need to have one of their lackeys in the room as well. So that sounds a bit sus in a democratic nation where we do have a government and an opposition. Why does the government get to sit on everything? Sounds a bit silly. We got here Gearhead Boris says, good day, mate. How you doing? Adrian Cole, thanks for joining in. My day has been good. You're asking me how my day's been. It's been good. I'm very settled in now to working with Avi. As you can imagine, the pain and suffering of working with Avi Yemeni. It's a regular thing now, but the good thing about it is that it's done on a paid basis now, unlike previously when it was done on a passion basis. So, Avi, if you're watching, feel free to do a super chat, Avi. One of these shows, when you get Avi Yemeni to do a super chat, he's very reluctant to do anything of that manner. We got one of the trolls here who's written a very long comment. You guys wouldn't have seen it because it won't pop up on the full thing. Archibald, thanks for joining in. Trolls are welcome in this show. I appreciate the criticism and the feedback. Obviously, anything that is violent in nature or you're being derogatory towards other people or insisting on violence might end up with you getting a ban. But overall, I open this floor up to free speech and criticism, including of myself. We've got another comment here from Lewis who says, did you see Clavicular recently went to Israel? Yeah, I've been following that and it's interesting. He's one of these young guys that's very popular on the streaming platforms like Kick and Twitch. I believe Kick more so. And yes, he's doing a tour of Israel, reaching a different audience and a lot of people are tuning into it. He has been doing the rounds of Israeli media as well and they've had a bit of a go at him, but at least he's gone there. Can't say... He's bit the bullet because there is a lot of baggage that comes with if you're a social commentator traveling to Israel these days because everyone has their opinion of Israel. And sometimes just the mere fact of going somewhere to understand what's actually taking place, people will think that, you're being paid for it or, I get all those accusations all the time. People say that I'm working for Mossad alongside Avi. So I've been through this for a long time. But yeah, good on Clavicular. I'm not the biggest fan of all this looks maxing and whatever other nonsense that they're imparting on the youth of today, but it is what it is. So it's been interesting. Someone said I've sold out to Avi. It's good fun. I've already got a super chat. Montana Meow, thank you so much for the support I appreciate it, guys. So if you're not watching, you can, on the super chat on, I believe my YouTube and also Rebel News Australia's YouTube. Montana Mia, how are you doing? Do you think we'll get a change of government in November? I am hopeful that we'll get a change of government. A lot of people are hoping, based on the discussions that I'm seeing people have, that it's hopefully like something like One Nation. That would be very dramatic here in Victoria, because they've very rarely had any influence in Victorian politics. I think just the last election, they had one senator elected, Ricky Lee. So it would be dramatic if One Nation were to get up based on some of the polling that we're seeing. But it's more likely at the moment that if there was a party that was going to defeat Labor, it would be the Liberals. And some of the polls do indicate that the Liberals are making inroads, but of course One Nation is there as well. The best case scenario is that the Liberals and One Nation get together on some type of preference deal, or if it requires to defeat Labor, some type of coalition. I'm not sure exactly how it will all work out, but it would be great to just get rid of Labor after all these decades of just corruption that we're seeing coming out. And they're panicking. They're worried about their leader, Jacinta Allen. We're going to be looking at some of that a bit later in the show as well. So let's have a look at some of the stories that I'll be talking about today. We'll get back to your chats as well. Thank you all for participating and sending in your chats. If you're joining in, guys, welcome to Real Time with Rukshan, live show where we discuss news that's happening in Australia mainly. I like to keep it focused on Australia because that is the country that we live in, obviously, and what happens here, more than what happens in the US and other countries, as exciting as it is. I know it's a bit dry, Australian politics, but as exciting as the overseas news is, I like focusing on Australia because this is what impacts us. So some of the stories we'll be talking about tonight, we've got the national anthem ban. The Australian national anthem was allegedly banned by Cricket Australia. Now it's back on, but I'll look at what that means. Why are we still going through this nonsense of banning things like the national anthem or talking about banning the flag? Every episode, I think we've discussed some aspect to do with these type of bans or multiculturalism or monoculturalism. And today we're going to be looking at the national anthem ban and some of the opinions that people have had online, as well as some of the reactions from politicians regarding this. I think it's all BS. I think it's just ridiculous, but I'll get to those opinions soon. After that, we also got Tony Abbott's claims about multiculturalism, that it's failed. Now, this video, I believe, is a bit older, but it's doing the rounds again because John Anderson shared it, former VP, not VP, Deputy Prime Minister. I'm thinking about US politics. So we'll look at that. At the same time, we've got these housing ads in Mandarin and Arabic. We've got some dude jumping out of a bush and attacking a woman that was chased away by, thankfully, man's best friend, dogs. Dogs are so reliable. I love dogs. So we'll look at that story as well. And there's some polls that show dipping support for One Nation. I don't know exactly. I talked about the polls yesterday. I don't know exactly how much validity these polls carry because they seem to jump from week to week. I will quickly look at political interference in Victoria Police. We'll look at that. And the Ditch the Witch truck. The Victoria Police or the Roadworthy Authority or whoever it is has written off that truck, saying that it's not roadworthy. So they've managed to hone in on this truck. So we'll look at that story, which I find interesting. Today we had a massive announcement that's a world first, apparently. Anthony Albanese setting an agenda for an AI framework in Australia. So that's around how AI will be managed in Australia at a governmental level. So this is something that's seen as the first time that this has been done in the world. Now, exactly how these claims come about, I don't know, whether it's the first time, because I have seen some regulation being discussed in other parts of the world as well. And we have seen, for instance, the Trump administration put out certain regulations around AI because a lot of this technology is being developed in the United States of America. But I will look at that because whenever Australia gets involved in a governmental framework, it usually involves overregulation and it also involves some manner of increasing their surveillance over the rest of us. So what does this mean? So we'll quickly look at that. Speaking of surveillance, I've also got here, if we have time, the UK social media ban. So they're talking about doing the same social media ban that they've done in Australia. But one interesting thing that I saw is obviously different countries are approaching this differently. And there's about 20 countries around the world that have done this social media ban. But in the UK now, they're talking about a curfew for some of the kids. So it's under 16 social media ban plus a curfew for those who are 16 and 17, where they can't access certain applications after a certain time at night. So makes me worry about once they get one of these kind of bans in place, slowly they add things to it. Now, I know this is not in Australia, but it shows you the way that they can be creative after they implement some of these bans. And, here we're talking about curfews for teens, but I do foresee a future where they might discuss curfews for the rest of us as well on our online use. Who knows? And then if we have time, different stories, not too political. We've got a wife recounting how her husband was sucked out of a plane window on Ryanair, and new economy plans that for airplanes that the Americans are planning for some of their fleet, which I think might actually end up being done here as well. But I think it's a bit of a scam. And of course, it wouldn't be a Real Time with Rukshan show without discussing some element of what Donald J. Trump is up to. And that is that he is threatening to bomb bridges as well as power plants next week if Iran does not play ball with him. Now, we've had these threats before. I don't know if you remember a few months back now. It seems like this war has been going on for a long time. Donald J. Trump did threaten to end civilization in Iran at one point, and that was talking around bombing bridges as well. But guys, welcome to the show. I'll read some of your chats first before we jump into the first story. Really quickly, we've got a few people that have jumped in here. Harry, Veronica, thanks for jumping on. Lucas, how you doing, mate? Matthew Goss says, Trump is the man. I love Donald J. Trump. For a long time, right, since I've been paying attention to a lot of these things that are going on. Obviously, he's been in politics for a while now, especially as president for 2 terms. There are going to be things which he hasn't got right. But overall, based on the way that he has been treated during both his tenures as president, and even, of course, during the election in 2020, I think he's done a fabulous job. Obviously, not everyone's going to see eye to eye on things like a war that's taking place in Iran, and maybe some of his, the way that he goes about addressing some of his foes. People don't always see eye to eye on that. But I think overall, Trump's done a great job. We've got Lucy Locker joining in. Thank you. Good to see you again. Love having you, the regulars, on here. Let's jump into the first story, guys. And that's the national anthem being banned. So I'm sick of this crap. I'm sure you guys are as well. Like, why do they make it so complicated with the Australian national anthem? Like, that is our national anthem. And in this instance, it's the Cricket Australia. Now, they are going to have a cricket game on Australia Day, which, again, this is something that was out of the question for a few years. But now they're going to bring it back on Australia Day. But it seems like it's been incremental steps, because they're like, oh, we'll bring the cricket back, but we can't play the anthem because, it might offend people or whatever woke nonsense, right? It doesn't really matter. I think we pay too much heedance to why this is an issue, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, the Australian cricket team is playing, or whatever team is playing in Australia, they're playing a sport, an Australian sport, the national sport, cricket, and they're worried about the anthem. So let's have a read of this story, and this is around Angus Taylor's reaction. So the opposition leader reacting to this. Look at all these ads on this newspaper. Okay, let's have a look. So the headline says, Angus Taylor blasts cricket bosses for woke moralising for saying national anthem could be shelved on Australia Day. Opposition leader Angus Taylor has accused Cricket Australia of woke moralising amid confusion over the use of the national anthem. Cricket Australia has yet to announce whether the national anthem will be played or not during the first game on Australia Day in years. There had not been a cricket match played on the national day in either 2025 or 2024, but in 2021, Cricket Australia made the decision to stop using the term Australia Day. Just bullshit. Like, why? I was so sick of these sporting bodies being involved in politics like this. Like, it's pretty evident that we're in Australia and that the public is celebrating Australia Day. Sports doesn't need to set the political tone. Let's keep reading. That drew the ire of the then Prime Minister Scott Morrison, who suggested the cricketing body should stick to sport and stay out of politics. Cricket Australia made the decision to have the BBL final on Australia Day as a part of a strategy to fight against reported ailing interest in the league. Now the confusion around the use of the national anthem could further threaten its popularity. Sorry to laugh, but yeah, cricket's obviously having a tough time compared to some of the other sports which are growing in Australia, especially the AFL. Cricket is struggling. And there is this perception that cricket is a bit boring as well. I have subcontinental heritage, so we find cricket interesting because that's pretty much the only thing a billion people in India or, the millions in Sri Lanka tend to be good at on the world stage is cricket. We've had a bit of success in that respect. So growing up, cricket was always an interest to me. And, I've always loved cricket. I played club cricket when I was growing up till about, senior levels, as in Dandenong West Cricket Club. Let's not get too fancy. But, it's the dying sport in a way. And there is not always enthusiasm around it. So why this organization is antagonizing the public, especially as a sport is struggling, it seems a bit weird. It really does. And obviously they're trying to reinvigorate the sport by using Australia Day. Seems like a cash grab of sorts because they went woke for a while and now they're bringing it back, but they don't want to play the anthem. It's all over the place. Let's actually have a look at... no, we won't worry about what he said. While it's welcome news that cricket will be played on Australia Day, Cricket Australia's decision not to play our national anthem is yet more tone-deaf, woke, moralising, he wrote on X. Yes, our past is not perfect, but our nation's achievements far outweigh the wrongdoings, and our nation is worth celebrating. I think that's a great point from Angus Taylor. Like, Australia is worth celebrating. You have a national anthem, sing the bloody national anthem at a sports game. Like, what is the big deal? We celebrate every other culture, whether it's Chinese New Year or Diwali, or recently we had Modi here. People were singing the Indian national anthem very proudly. So we celebrate all these cultures. And there would be people, like myself included, but I can imagine also white Australians, heritage Australians watching this play out in society where the politicians, the sporting bodies, they seem to elevate every single other group in the community. They seem to elevate migrant communities. They seem to elevate international issues like BLM sometimes, right? Remember that. They seem to elevate all the woke ideological fights that we have in society, like the LGBTQ week and this week and, Indigenous week. They give prominence to all these things, but they refuse to acknowledge something like Australia Day, which people do celebrate, that people that love their country, including migrant heritage Australians that celebrate Australia Day. So yeah, it might offend a few people. It might, not like when we hear welcome to country, yeah, that offends us. And sometimes they do it anyway. Like, they don't really care about the fact that it offends people. They've made a decision not to do it. And that's the thing, we don't want them meddling. A lot of the population don't want them meddling in just national parts of the celebration of this country, like the national anthem. It's insane. It's insane. Let's keep reading the article. Instead of kowtowing to activists who want to make Australians feel guilty about our past and ashamed of our nation, Cricket Australia should probably play our national anthem at the Big Bash final, reflecting the views of the overwhelming majority of Australians and cricket fans who love our country and feel profound gratitude for being Australian. So I got a few more reactions to this from other people online as well. I'll read some of your comments and your super chats as well, but that's the gist of it. It's a stupid thing that they've done. They seem to do this all the time. Everyone's sick of it. I'm sick of it. It does feel like the community's tide is shifting towards these things. Like, more councils are talking about having Australia Day celebrations. I think the city of Melbourne was looking at doing it. There was some opposition to that. So the tide is definitely shifting. Now, Cricket Australia has apparently said that it's going to happen. They're going to play the anthem. Let's have a listen to 2GB and what this is about. So this is a change of mind that they've had since the backlash. So Cricket Australia to play anthem at Australia Day match. Let's have a listen in while I read your comments.
Give it heaps with the Mazda BT50 range. Get into the BT50 XS cab chassis now from $39,990 drive away. Or the BT50 Boss from $58,990 drive away.
We'll let that play.
Don't miss out. T's and C's apply. See mazda.com.au for details.
There's been debate this week about the Big Bash League cricket final, which will be played in Australia Day next year, and whether our anthem is going to feature or not. Now, Cricket Australia now has had the sense, after previously deciding major cricket games would not be played on the 26th, they've deemed it will go ahead. This is good. They're not worrying about the insensitivities of the match being played on the 26th of January. Good. But there has been a debate over the past few years about whether the anthem should be played at major sporting events. And then the concern has been, if the anthem is sung on the 26th of January next year, our National Day, it might be insensitive to some people. And there's been a question of whether that would be appropriate, our own anthem on Australia Day at the cricket. Well, I can bring you some breaking news this afternoon. There is a development. I want to bring in our straight shooter. This is our straight shooter, David Elliott, who usually joins me on Thursday. David, you've got some breaking news.
I have, Clinton, and delighted that yesterday I spoke to Mike Baird, the chairman of Cricket Australia, and he's asked me to make sure that your listeners know that the national anthem will be played on Australia Day. I mean, like you, I saw that Warren Mundine interview yesterday and I hit the roof. I cannot understand why this Alistair Dobson at Cricket Australia had the right to say that our game on our day should not include our song. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous, and all power to Warren Mundine for calling it out. But, I mean, Mike, who's away at the moment with Kieran, his wife having a holiday before he started the big job at the NRMA, he gave me an ironclad guarantee that wokeism is dead in Cricket Australia, and he's going to be, as chairman, directing them to ensure that we sing the Australian national anthem on our national day, playing our national sport.
This is a very good decision by Mike Baird. Now, it was ridiculous that we went through years where we couldn't play a cricket match.
So there you go. So apparently due to the backlash, it will be played, but it doesn't even have to get to that. Like, why does it have to get to this type of backlash occurring for these sporting bodies to play the anthem? Like, it's just ridiculous. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Someone was saying that, mate, Aussies love cricket. I love cricket. I know Australians love cricket. It is a national sport after all. A lot of people, you know, when I was growing up in the 90s, cricket was much bigger than what it is today. It has deteriorated as a form of sport where people watch on television, especially Test cricket. Now that you can say that's because of all the different formats like the T20 that we have, and all the the BBL, and then we have the IPL or whatever from India, and all these kind of different leagues. Like, there's oversaturation perhaps in the market, and people are choosing not to get excited. The Tri-Series, Benson and Hedges Tri-Series, I remember all the great moments. And we don't really get that as much anymore. Only time that cricket actually is booming is if England visits for the Ashes, it does pretty well. Or if there's a Tri-Series involving like some of the bigger, subcontinental nations like India or Sri Lanka, for instance, if they come, or Pakistan. There's a bit of interest because of the demographics of the population that are in Australia now. Those tend to do well, but otherwise they are struggling as a sport, I personally believe, even though there's growing interest in the smaller leagues or the Premier League style format that's happening from around the world. But yeah, thanks for your comment. I appreciate it. Sharon, thanks for jumping on. Long-time watcher, first-time commenter. Thank you. Thanks for the comment. Joining the conversation more. Susie, hey Rukshan, love your shows. Thanks for coming back to doing them. Yeah, it's great to be back. On the social media ban, we'll get to that later as well, but Gaps Media's in our super chat. Thank you so much. Avi, where is your super chat? Great comment, mate. Anyway, my friend's kid have social media and nothing has changed. They have not been banned, so not sure what's going on. Yeah, I've seen a lot of kids still using social media. They've found a way around it. It's not actually very successful as far as I can see out in the wild. Kids are still using social media. If the parents are letting them use certain apps maybe on there, I don't know how they're doing it. Like, I'm not really paying too much attention to that side of things, but I have seen kids still using social media. Olivia Hayes, thank you for the super chat. Very generous of you. I appreciate the support. Recently saw the latest opposition pod with Avi, where you had the bald guy and who was, I think you mean Milk Bar TV, Nathan Livingston, who was getting sued by Andrew Tate. Do you think the Tate brothers are actually guilty of those crimes, or are they being falsely accused? I don't pay too much close attention to the Tate brothers, to be completely honest, especially now. Like I did for a while with Andrew Tate when he was blowing up and he was kind of in your face. You couldn't avoid it. But these days, not so much paying too much attention to it. Nathan is getting sued by the Tate brothers in a court in the US around the videos that he makes. And the point I want to make about the Tate brothers is a lot of the things that they say themselves tend to incriminate them. So you can say they're being falsely accused and, there's ramped up charges or all these type of things, but they do boast about a lot of the things that they've done. And a lot of that seems to match up with criminality. Now, that's for a court to decide. I can't necessarily decide that because I don't have all the evidence, but based on just the things they're saying, they're not doing any wonders for themselves in that respect. And, Nathan, I don't think he's done anything wrong to be sued. They're just being vindictive and putting him through the process because they have cash to throw around as well. So that's what I think is happening with the Tates. Ilmaz, good to see you, mate. Prime Minister Rukshan, great to have you on. So let's keep going, guys. I don't want to spend too much time on the national anthem debate, but we all know it's woke bullshit and they'll never stop. But the only way that they can stop is actions like this, where the public puts pressure on them, they reverse course, they play the anthem, and it just becomes normal. Like, that is how the culture will shift. Once you see the anthem being played without any debates around it, then the culture has changed. Once you see Australia Day parades coming back without too much fuss about it, then the culture has changed. Right now, the woke left and all their allies and all the corporates and the government, frankly, the Labor governments around Australia, most of the government is Labor, state and federal. Once they're defeated in the sense of not resisting the will of the people when it comes to these issues, then it'll be fine. Like, the culture will have shifted then. Because I think most people, unless it's made an issue by these sporting bodies and these woke individuals that work at these organizations and make these decisions for everyone else, like, no one asked them to do this. Unless it was for these small handful of people being woke, we wouldn't even be discussing these things. Like, no one cares that the Australian anthem was played at the cricket. Like, it's a normal thing. It's expected. It's nothing tremendous that it was played. It should be played. It should be just a very normal thing that happens. But we've elevated these issues to this debate around who we are as Australians and all this stuff. And it just doesn't sit right. It's a bit vile, if you ask me, that's even done, because we do elevate other cultures, other peoples, other foreign issues on a pedestal, and we can't have a national anthem in Australia without these issues. It's ridiculous. So on that topic, let's go look at Tony Abbott's video on multiculturalism, and I'll just watch a little bit of this. We'll play bits and pieces. I'll pause here and there. I don't want to just take this video and play the whole thing because this is off John Anderson's channel. But this was shared a few weeks ago, I believe, but it's being shared again. And this is Tony Abbott, who's now the president of the Liberal Party. So he's working in the behind the scenes of the Liberal Party, trying to revitalize them after the disaster of Susan Ley and the struggles they're having now with One Nation really eating their lunch. This is Tony Abbott's take on multiculturalism and its failure in Australia. So let's have a listen to the former Prime Minister, Tony Abbott.
For years now, many Australians have worried that our country is changing too fast and not always for the better. This disquiet that had been surging in response to obvious Jew hatred, graffiti, vandalism, firebombings and hate marches has only hardened and intensified since the Bondi massacre. Two people, the son born here and the dad here for almost 3 decades without ever becoming a citizen, thought so little of our traditional commitment to freedom of religion and the sanctity of human life that they turned a Hanukkah celebration into a shooting gallery, inspired, the police say, and the evidence suggests, by Islamic State. Plainly, multiculturalism has failed, and diversity is not our strength. When two individuals have so rejected our national ideals, the ideals reflected in the citizenship oath that all new Australians are required to take, pledging allegiance to Australia and its people, and these are the key words, whose democratic beliefs I share, whose rights and liberties I respect, and whose laws I will uphold and obey.
So Abbott, sorry to stop there, but Abbott made the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott made a great point there around the Bondi shooting. I think that was a point where this discussion really changed. People really saw the ugly side of when all of this goes wrong, because we, like he said, we did have a kid, especially the son that grew up in Australia, born here, that has been radicalized into committing an ISIS terrorist attack in Australia. He's been radicalized in mosques in Australia. For all intents and purposes, he is a product of Australia, and that is a reflection on the fact that multiculturalism has failed to such an extent that now people are being slaughtered on the streets by these terrorist acts. Now, there's always been small cases of terrorism in Australia. We had the Sydney Lynn Cafe siege and so forth. So this is not necessarily a new thing, but the manner in which it's happening and the acceleration of this is new, and it's dangerous territory. And we're so far removed from the rest of the world, living out here in this continent in Australia, that we're not we don't have the border issues like in Europe, where these terrorists can maybe sneak through very easily. Like a lot of these things can be managed and controlled, but we've gotten rid of that control. It's become a free-for-all, and now people are being terrorized, and it's only looking like it's only getting worse as governments like the Labor government don't want people to assimilate. They're very much against it. Discussions around multiculturalism often end up being people being labeled as racist for just talking about the issues. I think it's okay to talk about the issues. You don't even need to attack people for any racial traits to talk about the failures of a concept like multiculturalism, because it is not distinctive in its application to just Western nations. Like other countries choose to do it or do not do it. The West obviously does it at a very different rate. But all around the world, you can find aspects of the ideas around multiculturalism and how it's controlled or not used whatsoever in that culture. For most countries, I would say, are closer to a multi-ethnic monoculture. So the West really has this on acceleration, and it's not proved to be successful in its current state. And whether it can even be repaired is hard to see, because in the key proponents of this, countries like the UK and Australia, it's failed. In the UK, definitely it's failed. And Australia, it's very much bursting at the seams, like it's almost over. Let's keep listening.
Multiculturalism has failed, and diversity is indeed not our strength. When numerous Muslim leaders seem less interested in condemning that atrocity, the worst ever terrorist attack on our soil, and in chiding the public about the dangers of Islamophobia, even though there are some parts of Islamic thought that are hardly compatible with life in a liberal democracy. The rot was obvious as early as October 8, 2023, when Islamist leaders here celebrated the October 7 atrocity as a day of victory. It's a day of pride! It's a day of victory! It was confirmed on October 9, when an ugly mob marched on the Opera House screaming unspeakable things, followed by weekly hate marches in our major cities demanding death to the IDF and globalise the Intifada. Prime Minister Albanese is right to declare that newcomers should leave their hatreds in the customs hall. But as things stand, not everyone does, and there's no sign that will change under the current government. Now, I'm not going to pose the question of whether there are any good Muslims.
I mean, the issue with what Tony Abbott is saying is that the Liberal Party under Scott Morrison was in power for a while as well, and even under Tony Abbott. And everyone shares a part of this story. It has not just happened under the Labor government. This has been a gradual thing that's happened in front of our eyes. And a lot of people, like Pauline Hanson, that's why she's popular right now. She was talking about some of the issues that could arise from this 30 years ago. That's why people are seeing that she's consistent, because she's been saying it for that long, right? These guys are talking about it like some revolutionary idea that's come to them, that it's failing. If this issue was actually addressed in the 1990s, like when Pauline Hanson was talking about it in 1996, 1997, we could be in a drastically different Australia. Because one of the things that happens when something like multiculturalism fails in the manner that it's failing and is brought up in this debate type topic, it's uncomfortable for everyone. You can see the way that people are talking about this, it's uncomfortable for a lot of people. And, I think people are being brave in a way by talking about this as well, because I'm seeing in some of the comments, yeah, you can be labeled a racist. You can be labeled different things. Some people do take things a bit too far in terms of the rhetoric, and they get called out for it rightly as well. But the way that it's been debated today, the things that Tony Abbott is saying today, if you go back 5 years, the Liberal government individuals would not say things like what Tony Abbott's saying. That's just the truth. Like they've changed their stance very recently to match the energy of One Nation.
Muslims in Australia. Of course there are. If the Bondi gunmen represented the worst of Islam, the mindset of death to the infidels, on the very same day, Ahmed al-Ahmed represented the best of Islam, protecting people in danger because all life is blessed by God. People of all faiths and races should be welcome in Australia, provided they accept our democratic beliefs and respect our rights.
That's a very good point. Like that is pretty much the talking points today, that somehow diversity is strength is always pushed down through on us by all the corporates and all the governments and the woke leftists, that diversity is our strength. But time and time again, it's been proven that it's not really our strength. The latest incarnation of this was during the soccer with the Socceroos, because they kicked a few goals. They were saying, well, diversity is our strength. Look how far the Socceroos got because, they won a game of soccer. That shows you that multiculturalism is working, which is a ridiculous notion, because then, do you compare that to the crimes that take place? Just in my state here in Victoria, we have machete bins, and machete bins were not required in Australia at one point, not that long ago. And now we required machete bins. Now, that is not because of the prevailing aspects of, the British heritage Australians that founded modern Australia. It's not because of them that there's machete bins required. It's because of the diversity that's happened, and it's not worked out. So there are aspects of multiculturalism which has failed, and until the left actually admits to these failures and sees that just pretending that it hasn't failed, it actually makes society worse for everyone, including migrants themselves. We just get this wish-wash of something that is vaguely resembles unity, social cohesion in this country because there's machete bins. Like that's the social cohesion, that the government puts out bins for you to put your machetes away. Like that makes us, Australian or whatever it is. That makes our diversity strong. That's where we're at, and it's ridiculous. It shouldn't be like that. It never was like that. And you can take this back multiple levels. You can go back decades and decades, and obviously there's been a gradual change, and people will have different opinions. And some people will say, I'm seeing it in the comments, some people are saying that all immigration is bad, that, we send everyone back, we re-immigration, we deport everyone. People are saying these things, but it's come to this point, it's come to this debate because of the failures of multiculturalism. If multiculturalism was working, and if this BS around diversity of our strength was actually something real and tangible that we could actually see, we could show as evidence of why it's successful, we wouldn't be having this debate like this. People would not be, Australians are pretty easy and laid back and easygoing and welcoming and tolerant naturally. There wouldn't be a need for this friction that we have in society. And the reason we have this friction that continues to grow more and more is because our politicians are not accepting the failures of this experiment that's been taken place in the West. A lot of the rest of the world understands these failures because, it's not really a new thing, this multiculturalism thing. It's been tried for thousands of years in different parts of the world, and it's usually ended up in some type of civil conflict, ethnic cleansing, some type of civil war when things go wrong. Now it's very different today because there's a lot more systemic control by governments and police forces, and it's all regimented, and the state has a lot more power than what it was like back in the day, right? When things were just a free-for-all. It's very different today. But we're not going to have a civil war. We're just going to have people being robbed in their homes. We're going to have people being carjacked on the street when they go to fill in their petrol more and more in Australia. We're slowly becoming a version of Grand Theft Auto that we used to associate with countries like the USA. Now we're seeing that here in Australia, and it's just wrong. It's just sad to see that's happened. And, there's no easy fix, but at least the Liberals are talking about this now. I think that's a great thing. And at least, of course, One Nation have really pushed this forward. And even Labor, they've had to concede on some points, but they're still very hesitant because they can see the power that they can gauge from having this non-assimilated population that are not really loyal to Australia per se. They're loyal to their remaining in this country and getting benefits or whatever it is, and that actually helps Labor maintain power. That's kind of where we're at today. Stop that there. We get the point. What Tony Abbott's saying. I just thought it's interesting. Obviously, this video has gone viral again. This is a few months old, I believe. You can watch the full thing on John Anderson, the former deputy prime minister, who's got a podcast. He's doing very well for himself with that. So let's get to some of your super chats, guys, and then we'll jump back onto the news stories. I'll go in order. Let's have a look. We got one here from Oliver Hayes. Thank you again. Generous super chat. I appreciate it. Rook, you're right that Andrew Tate has boasted about the webcam business. However, I don't think running your own webcam business is even illegal. If the women consent, so unless Tate physically force them, I just don't see how it's illegal. Well, this is the thing. I agree with you that, we do live in a world where there is these type of businesses where traditionally it would be frowned upon, but technically they're legal, like webcam businesses or OnlyFans, running a brothel, certain types of prostitution, being a pimp per se in this world as a business individual. There is legality to it depending on the jurisdiction that you operate within. So yeah, in that respect, we can make a moral judgment on what the Tates did, an ethical judgment about the choices that they've made business-wise and the things that they're involved in. But, we're living in a very strange time where I've seen OnlyFans being promoted as a career path on some of our mainstream shows, like when they're discussing this. Not openly, but just by the mere fact of them advertising that this is what, young girls are doing now straight out of school. So this is the world that we live in. I don't agree with it. As a Christian, I find lots of problems with the way that the world has turned. But you're right, legally, if we're looking at the Tates, people can be upset about the things they were involved in, but is it really something that rises to the level where they're being prosecuted today for some of those actions? Now, amongst all that, you do have individuals involved, from what I understand of the cases, who have come forward with allegations. And again, with the law, you have to investigate those allegations. I think the best thing to do here is to actually, especially with what's happening in Romania, which is ridiculous. I don't really understand the justice system too much in Romania, but it's dragged on for so long. It's dragged on for so long. It's become a bit of a circus. You want justice to be done. You need justice to be done swiftly and quickly. And the way that process works there, it's not the same as what we're used to here, right? So in Australia, if there's a case against the Tates, it would be the prosecution would have to take that case ready to go, get it approved by the DA or whatever, the district prosecutor here, whatever it is, and then get it ready for the court. In Romania, it's happening like in some other, backwards way, which is a bit different and is dragged on. It's become a public spectacle and no one really knows anymore. And that's why there's all this speculation around this. But I know they've been charged or allegedly, will be charged in the UK as well. And they do have a lot of legal issues around this. The only way that they can really clear their names, I believe, completely is just by going to a courtroom and facing these allegations. But yeah, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. And I understand the nuance of what you're trying to say around that. I need to have some water. Thanks for the super chat, Harry. Why is Dan Andrews, Albo, and Jacinta not in jail? That's true. Definitely, Dan Andrews, I think, should be locked up for all manner of things that he's been involved in, I believe. At least of all the trauma that he put the Victorian public through. And some of the things I remember, I don't know if you remember during the COVID times, the quarantine hotel saga. All these guys got away with it. They got away with the damage that did to the public. They're responsible for a lot of the damage, and they got away with it completely. Jacinta Allen, yeah, she's got all this CFMU corruption that she's inherited. She's a good foot soldier for Daniel Andrews. I think that's why he left her in charge, because she's keeping the closet, all the spiders in the closet hidden from everyone and trying to keep that under control. But she's got a bit of her own mess that's developed. We'll look into that a bit later as well. And Albo should just be jailed, of course, just because he's Albo. I don't know what criminality that I can attribute to Albo. I'm sure the Labour Party is involved in types of corruption that Albo has known about as well. But yeah, thanks for the super chat, mate. Auditing Australia says it's Melbourne's 191 birthday, 30th of August. Celebrate this wonderful city of Melbourne Day. Head down to Queen Victoria Market and salute John Batman. John Batman, the founder of Melbourne City. Great suggestion. I'm not too far from the Victoria Market, so if I'm free that day, we might head down and take a look at that. So it's a great city, one of the best cities in the world, the city of Melbourne. I know it's decayed a little bit under the Labor stewardship, but I think it's a great city. It's got wonderful elements to it. I wasn't going to say the diversity is our strength here in Melbourne, but I think culturally and just the Melburnian culture that's developed over the decades, it's a great city. And I understand why it does get ranked in these most livable city in the world polls that take place. Like, it always seems to top them. Now, I don't fully trust those polls, but I kind of get the appeal of Melbourne, like having been to other cities. It is a very different vibe, and I do like the Melbourne vibe for sure. There's another super chat that Lucas has just sent in, but I'll come back to that later, Lucas. I'm just going to go to the next story, and we'll keep the show moving along. A few more people have jumped on, guys. It's so great to have you all here. I'm loving seeing all the regular names show up as well. So the next story that I wanted to talk about is related to all this. Let me just get my screen going. Ooh. Here we go. And that is the ads that are appearing in Arabic and Mandarin. So let's have a look. This Current Viewpoint on X has done a compilation of this. So we'll just watch this compilation to see what's going on. Let me just pull up the screen.
Wait until you see and hear these ads that have been produced by the federal government. This morning, One Nation is demanding answers. They want to know why Anthony Albanese is marketing affordable housing schemes to foreigners. Aren't they designed to get young Aussies into homes? These ads have been produced in Arabic and Mandarin. And I'm going to play one for you right now. This is the one in Mandarin. And Pauline Hanson, after seeing it, has asked, please explain.
對好多澳洲人而言，置業似乎遙不可及。但而家澳洲政府5% deposit scheme 已經推出新安排。請瀏覽 firsthomebuyers.gov.au。
So there's the Mandarin version of the ad, and One Nation says the Albanese government continues to work against the interests of Australian people. Promoting a housing scheme to foreigners in foreign languages does not help Australians secure affordable accommodation or help Australians to enter the housing market. Now, the Albanese government introduced a temporary ban on foreigners buying established property. That was in 2025. They then extended that until 2027. And foreigners can still buy new or near new dwellings, off the plan properties, vacant residential land and established dwellings for redevelopment. And for the record, Chinese nationals own 67% of the 40,000 residential properties that are registered as foreign owned in Australia. So the question...
There's a good compilation there that I found online from Viewpoint. Let me just make this smaller. Someone did write, am I mad that it's not in Hindi too? I don't understand Hindi, guys. I'm not Indian. I know I look Indian, maybe. Like, people might confuse me for an Indian. I'm not Indian. I don't understand Hindi. The only language I really understand is English. That's the language I speak, English. I don't understand Hindi. I'm not upset that it's not in Hindi. I don't think anything in this country should be translated. I agree with Pauline Hanson. There should be no translations into foreign languages. I'm sorry. There shouldn't be. Like, for official things that are happening, people should have the knowledge of knowing English. They should be pushed to learn English. There should be small areas for translation where it's required, but something like a housing deposit scheme, if you can't speak English and you don't really understand what's going on, I don't think you've integrated into the country in a way that you should be benefiting from these type of schemes. It should be targeted towards people who have assimilated into this nation, who are citizens. And then, that comes with the question, well, someone can be a citizen and not really understand English. Well, this is the thing, especially for migrants who are coming to this country. If you can't pass basic tests around the language of the country that you are now assimilating into, and not to an extent where you can't understand an ad where the government's trying to help you with these schemes around housing, then maybe you shouldn't qualify for citizenship. Like, the bar should be very high. The only time that we should be taking care of people in these instances, if there's some sort of intellectual disability not of their own fault, or something in that regard. Like, of course, we should have services for accessibility, for people understanding. For international travelers, we should have the ability for them to understand, signs, for instance, or someone at a tourist place to just give them a translation, maybe things like this. Like, you get that when you go to other countries as well, right? There's people that are helping you. If you go to, for instance, parts of Asia, people will try to learn English or translate their menus into English so you can understand easier. Like, you can do those things in a private sense to help people, but as a public institution, the government, it shouldn't be making it easier for people not to assimilate into this country. And one of the most basic forms of assimilation is language. When you learn the language of the nation that you're in, the country that you're a part of, that is one of the most basic and fundamental forms of assimilation. If you can't do that much, then, what are we doing here? That's the thing. That's the issue. And I think that's why people get pissed off around this. Obviously, we have all the other pressures around immigration and also around the housing market, the cost of living. People are seeing the struggles that they go through themselves personally, the people in their lives, their family, their friends, everyone's struggling. And at that time, the government is making ads in foreign languages, seemingly to help people who have not really assimilated into the country whatsoever. And everyone's asking the question, so what the hell are we really doing here in this instance? So it's fair. It's fair. Anti Elon says that Rukshan can't help himself. What do you mean I can't help myself? All right. You said I failed a basic test. What basic test did I fail? I actually did English and literature for my VCE. I did classical societies and cultures. I went to university to study a law degree that I never finished. I think I passed English quite well, to be completely honest. Here we go. Arthur Morgan says, I don't want them to assimilate. I don't want them to be here at all. And there are people that are having these views. I see it a lot more. I see people expressing these views. I do believe it's still in the minority, though. And it's very different. Like, you're talking about a democratic process around elections, and the people's fantasies around re-immigration of citizens is just ridiculous. We're not really dealing with reality here. We have to work with what we have. Some cases, and some people might say unfortunately, but we have to work with what we have, and we can't change this country in this manner that people are talking about without actually getting more of the community who might be at odds with each other involved in the project of Australia to make this country better. Everyone has to be involved. Tracy, thank you for giving me pass marks on my English. I do tend to write in a certain way, which I've tried to tone down a little bit, because people are like, oh, Rukshan, the things you're writing, it doesn't sound like you actually wrote them. It sounds like AI. Again, it's just from the fact that I spent a lot of time in studying literature, doing English-related things, studying classical literature as well. And there's certain words and things that you learn when you go deep into this that stays with you. And I've tried to move away from that because it's not really in to speak like that or to write like that. Let's catch up on these super chats. We have one here from Lucas who says, Rukshan, thoughts on Tucker Carlson recently claiming that Charlie Kirk was killed due to his shifting views on Israel? I call BS on that. That is complete BS. Now, Charlie Kirk is someone that had a myriad of opinions on many different topics. And, based on the political discussions which are happening in America, people shift their views. People change their views based on the war, for instance. The war in Iran is a great example that's caused people to have a lot of different views on around America's foreign policy and the actions that Trump is taking. Because one of the consequences of war is you might end up with boots on the ground. And we know the history of the Americans in the Middle East. We could look at Afghanistan, Iraq, right? The two most notable ones. Decades of American troops, thousands of lives lost on the Allies side, as well as hundreds of thousands of people lives lost on for those countries. You don't necessarily want to get involved in a ground war. And when we're discussing even something like Gaza and Palestine and Israel and America's involvement and foreign lobbying and the money that's spent on providing weapons and so forth, people are entitled to have a discussion. And at times, things can get heated. People can have different views. Charlie Kirk expressed certain views about Israel at one point, but at the same time, you can find thousands, maybe, of moments of Charlie Kirk in full solidarity with Israel. Even so far as having a photograph, just like I have a photograph at the wall in Israel, like people bring that photo up all the time. I wanted to do that because as a part of my faith, it's completely the way that people misconstrue these things is ridiculous. And they're trying to take one moment, in this instance, Charlie Kirk, back to your super chat, Charlie Kirk being at the wall, being against Israel just before he lost his life, saying that this is the reason. And, Tucker Carlson, a lot of these woke right podcasters, they've gone down this line of thought. Candace Owens, of course, famously has gone very deep down this line of thought, and she's completely lost her marbles. She's become the ridicule of the internet. More people I see ridiculing her. She gets ratioed all the time, and those are just some metrics. But she sounds ridiculous because her conspiracy changes every single day. Tucker Carlson is no different, and I'm saying this as a massive fan of Tucker Carlson once. He has changed a lot in the last 2 to 3 years. He has changed a lot. And again, people are entitled to change their views, but I just not buying it. Jesse J, got one more super chat before I get to the next topic. Rook, I've heard Avi speak about this, but not you. I was wondering what your stance is on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Who is more in the wrong if you had to pick one, and why? Generally, just curious. Look, I'm no expert on that conflict. I know the basics of it like everyone else that's been watching this. So I'm not too deep into following what's happening on the ground in Russia and Ukraine now. At the start of the war, yes, I was interested in some aspects of it. Obviously, it's dragged on now for a few years. I remember the day that the Russian tanks almost got to the capital on the first couple of days that we were watching that on the live streams. I remember there were some massive spaces and there was a lot of discussion around this. There are some conflicts that we have in the world that can't really be viewed through a modern lens. We try to view everything through the modern lens of the countries that have been created today. For instance, like a lot of the borders and the nations that we have, especially in Europe, you know, you look at the history of that place, especially around the Russia and the Ukraine, there's a lot of history there. And I'm not saying that makes one side necessarily right. I'm not saying the Russians have some claim or the Ukrainians have some claim, but that's going to cause issues on borders. You're going to have ethnic infighting, ethnic issues, and there's always this need to redraw borders because people feel like, you know, it's the only way you can enforce your country's right to exist. Now, there's a complexity in the Russia and Ukraine conflict with NATO, with the Minsk agreement, with the fact that it feels like the NATO and the Americans are encroaching towards Russia. So there's all of that. Again, I'm not qualified enough to give a 100% on who's right or wrong, but I don't tend to think that the West should interfere too much in conflicts. Like even the conflict in Israel and Palestine, all that stuff, I don't think the West should involve itself too much. Like some of these conflicts just need to be sorted out by those people. And it's tragic. It's tragic sometimes what happens, but without sorting out conflicts, you don't really get resolution. It's like, you know, we celebrate sometimes the fact that the history of how these countries came about, but we don't really understand that a lot of that history is around conflict and war and death. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but sometimes things just need to be sorted out. And I think for a long time, we've been meddling in issues in other parts of the world that have come back to bite us in the ass later on. And this feels like one of those issues. But having said that, you know, the Ukrainians have been very brave to push back against Russia for this long. And of course, they have the Western support. They need that Western support to do that. But, you know, it's like David versus Goliath if you're on the side of the Ukrainians. But thanks for your super chat. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I'm not too much of an expert on it. That's why I don't talk too much about Russia and Ukraine. All right, guys, let's keep going with the next story. And this is the just from today in Melbourne. A man chased and pounced on by a pack of dogs after attempting to assault two women in Melbourne. So again, this is the state of the country, the state of Victoria. The only good news here is the dogs were set onto this disgusting individual. Let's have a look at the story.
Terrific. And now we've got ads in a completely different language. What benefit does that do to any of us?
No, they're not even showing it. It's a live show. A man trying to sexually assault two women in Melbourne has been stopped by a pack of dogs. The man who attempted to assault at an oval in Melbourne was chased by a group of dogs who were captured on video jumping up at him as he fled. I mean, these dogs are great. These dogs are maybe doing a better job, really, than the politicians and the crime fighters that letting us down in the state of Victoria. Like, this is the spirit that you need to go after these type of criminals and really go after them. And look at these dogs. They're just doing a wonderful job. Two women were walking their dogs on Gardeners Creek around 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday when a man jumped out from a nearby bushes and grabbed one of them, says Victoria Police. After being fought off by one of the women, he turned on the second. This could have ended very tragically. I think, they were very lucky that there was two women together in this instance, and the dogs were there as well. But we've seen this in Victoria before as well, where we've had women who have been walking, jogging, being jumped on by these sexual perverts, sexually assaulted, and even murdered. So this could have turned out very differently based on the location of where these individuals happen to be walking. Both women successfully broke free of the man before their dogs chased him away. Footage of the incident shows at least 7 dogs chasing the alleged attacker into a tunnel underneath the Monash freeway. Police are investigating the incident, which occurred at Riggity Oval in the suburb of Kooyong on Tuesday morning. The man can be seen tripping and stumbling over the dogs as he attempted to run away. Police have described the man as being of African appearance, wearing a black tracksuit with grey hooded top, along with white socks and sliders and blue backpack. So, an African individual that attacked these women jumped out of the bushes, and again, these dogs are the champions in all of this. If only one of them grabbed him, bit him, and brought him down. But just sickening that this is the condition that we're facing. And it's scary. Like, I tell my wife as well, just to be careful what time you go out at night, because you don't know these days. Like, it's not how it used to be. It's just not how it used to be. Like, you can't just walk around anywhere, even if you're just seemingly doing something innocent as walking your dogs or going for a walk. And this is not at nighttime. This is during the day. Some dude jumps out of the bush to sexually assault you. We have a lot to improve in this regard when it comes to crime fighting. It's just totally out of control. Let's keep going. And on that, we're just going to go to the next story, because I think it's all related to this around the policing that we're seeing.
Political
So before I play this, let's just read this. The Allen government has been accused of political interference after claims it controls who the state's highest ranking police officer can meet. Shadow Police Minister Brad Batten says he's been unable to hold a briefing with Chief Commissioner Mike Bush unless he agrees to a government staffer being present. In an exclusive interview with state political reporter Jessica McGill, Batten says it's a practice that's politicised Victoria Police. Let's have a listen in.
The Allen government has been accused of political interference after claims it controls who the state's highest-ranking police officer can meet. Shadow Police Minister Brad Batten says he's been unable to hold a briefing with Chief Commissioner Mike Bush unless he agrees to a government staffer being present. In an exclusive interview with state political reporter Jessica Maggio, Batten says it's a practice that's politicised Victoria Police.
Victoria Police, an independent agency, that's anything but.
What are they worried that Mike Bush is going to say? I think he's a very reasonable person in the conversations I've had with him at events.
Chief Commissioner Mike Bush has been in the role for 12 months, but is yet to hold a formal meeting with the opposition, unless it's under the watchful eye of the Allen government.
I think this government likes to think that whoever they've appointed will answer to them.
Last month, the Shadow Police Minister invited the Chief Commissioner to a Shadow Cabinet meeting, just days after the release of the latest crime statistics, which saw a dip in youth offending but a steady rise in adult crime. The letter was an opportunity to brief the coalition on the latest findings and the Chief Commissioner's stance on mandatory sentencing.
We want to start talking to the Chief Commissioner about comments he's made in the media. This shouldn't be about politics.
And yet, 3 days later, a reply from the Chief Commissioner's office stated, per protocols, requests for MPs to meet with members of Victoria Police must be directed via the Minister for Police, and a directive to reach out to the Minister's office.
That's a genuine concern. That's the politicisation of Victoria Police Force that we don't need here in this state.
The Allen government says it's purely protocol and one that existed when the Liberals were in government. But Brad Batten says that wasn't the case when Shane Patton held the title before he was forced out of the job. the pair having met frequently and without a government staffer.
Shane, he would never go and give away trade secrets, or he never spoke politically.
Now his role as Shadow Police Minister is shadowed by ministerial staff.
Under two ministers, including Anthony Carbines and the Minister for Corrections in the past, when I've gone and done tours of the prison, like one next door to us, I've had to have a ministerial advisor do that with me and escort me around the entire trip.
And what was the ministerial advisor doing?
They follow you around, take notes and look at the secretaries or the commissioners in an awkward way if they look like they're going to answer a question that may be political.
On one occasion, when a government staffer fell ill, a tour with Chief Commissioner Mike Bush went ahead.
I can tell you now the Commissioner was open but didn't go into anything that was political, just put the facts on the table, and that's what we need.
Brad Batten says all he wants is an opportunity to have an unguarded conversation as the alternative government.
Public service are there to serve Victorians, not serve the government of the day, and I think it's about time Labor realises that.
Jessica Maggio, 10 News.
Jessica Maggio, I butchered her name, I apologise. But yeah, look, it's crazy that this is happening. Now, they're saying it's protocol, that this is how it normally is. But you'd think if Shane Patton was meeting Brad Batten previously without having a government handler from Jacinta Allen's government watching over him, why this dude can't do it as well. But then it just goes to show you that the suspicion that we've had for years that Victoria Police actually operates as a branch of the Labor government. They are almost like the state troopers for the Labor government, the state police. We saw that very famously during COVID times. How can we forget how integral the police were with the Andrews government during that time and the things that they were doing on behalf of the Andrews government that any police chief or, I think a humane police officer would have looked at that and been like, this seems at odds with everything that we believe in. But obviously they went along with all of it. Here again, feels like this particular individual, the new Commissioner Mike Bush, he seems like a Labor yes man as well. Like, again, I don't know him personally. I'm just saying based on this article and this news report, he could push back against all of this and say, nah, I don't want to meet. I won't meet Brad Batten with Labor staffer watching. I'll meet him privately. Like he's a police commissioner. He should be able to chat with the opposition without having Labor watching over him and taking notes or whatever else they're doing. It's just weird. It seems like something that would happen in CCP China, right? It seems like something very communist, so much state control. We are seeing some comments about Ukraine and Russia as well. And it just generally, I was answering that super chat. But if you're asking me which side I support, as someone who is Western aligned, I support the West. And, our enemy is Russia. So I support the West in that regard. And I understand that, the USA, Australia, countries which I'm a part of, the sphere that we are a part of, our allies, are supporting Ukraine. It would be treasonous to support Russia in that instance. Let's keep going with the story to the next one. And that is that the Jacinta Allen is not having a great time. If we can pull this up. Ditch the Witch billboard truck pulled off the road. A truck showcasing a digital billboard labelled sexist by the Prime Minister has been slapped with a defect notice by the police. Police struggle to catch these migrant criminals that are running around rampant in Victoria. We have machete bins, but they've managed to find a defect with this truck that's got Jacinta Allen's face on it that says "Ditch the Witch." You can just imagine the police resources that were put towards this with Mike Bush, maybe even in the meeting as well, right? I'm just saying, I don't know for sure, but it just feels like this is the kind of stuff that gets attention in Victoria. If they want to fine us, they'll put effort into that. They won't fix the potholes, but they'll fine you for using the roads, but they won't fix the potholes, right? They won't fight criminals. They won't fight the crime that's taking place. They won't protect women from these sexual deviants that are running around the state. But if you are using a truck as a billboard to advertise against the Premier, the police will somehow find a defect with the truck. This is where we're at. The billboards are driven around the city on sides of trucks. It depicts Miss Allen wearing a witch's hat next to Ditch the Witch slogan. Victoria Police confirmed an Isuzu truck was subject of a defect notice in Melbourne earlier in July after a police investigation found the billboards did not meet regulatory standards. Come on. The defect notice follows an investigation into the addition of billboards to the vehicle that falls outside the standards of regulation. Okay, so that's the problem. The problem is the billboards were added to the truck. Okay. At the time of the complaint, the truck was reportedly displaying advertisements promoting a Melbourne brothel. Gotham City brothel or the Frank. It does seem like that we live in Gotham City here in Melbourne when you read this. And it's all funny, like the brothel things there. We got the police going after a defect notice on this truck. Crime is rampant. We got the opposition leader saying that he can't meet the police chief without having some lackey from Labor watching and writing notes. What is going on? How did we end up here? Anyway, that's enough of that story. Police have done their job that they think they're meant to do, which is go after trucks with political advertising and find defects. Insane. Let's go back to my storyboard. And one more for Jacinta Allen. Let's have a listen in on this.
Issues that face you, and obviously that voters will be using to make their final determination about whether they no longer support a Labor government in Victoria, particularly on crime and corruption. So at the top of that list, obviously, is the infiltration of state infrastructure projects by union criminals. You've rejected the figure put forward by corruption buster Jeffrey Watson about how much money that crime and corruption has cost your state. He said it cost the state $15 billion. If Jeffrey Watson has the wrong number, what is the right number?
Well, Jeffrey Watson has since said that figure he claimed that he has been misquoted. So that figure remains in dispute. But
so
what's the immediate action?
Let me just come back to this. It matters. You have said that this is not the right figure. I want to know whether you have asked the question about what the number is and what the answer to that question is. How much has that crime and corruption in the CFMEU cost Victorian taxpayers?
Well, we have taken action, Sarah.
No,
we took
how much
immediate
has it
action
cost? How much
to give
has
police,
it cost?
Well, giving police the additional powers, giving the police additional powers, because there is absolutely no tolerance for these allegations of criminal behaviour, which is why immediate action was important. It's why Victoria Police have been given additional powers. The Labour Hire Authority here in Victoria has also been given additional powers. And that action is working. The police have laid 88 charges. The Labour Hire Authority has cancelled something like 150 construction industry licences.
So if I could come back to my question, I'm testing how curious you were to know what the actual figure was, the cost of this egregious crime and corruption in your state. What is the cost to the taxpayer?
Well, again, this is why I'm giving Victoria Police those additional powers and the Labour Hire Authority the additional powers to investigate this.
It's very interesting here watching the ABC interview one of their own in Labor and apply some type of journalistic rigor to it when questioning Jacinta Allen. That's how unpopular Jacinta Allen is, even within these left-wing circles. It's very hard to hide the disdain that a lot of people are having for Labor here in Victoria, because they are just, I think they're screwing it up. If Labor are going to lose in any seat in Australia, because they've got power in most of the states, it might be Victoria under Jacinta Allen. She has not managed to do what Daniel Andrews did. Daniel Andrews ran a very tight ship. He did not allow these type of stories to get bigger. Somehow he managed to keep it all under control. Jacinta Allen has failed to do that. She's not as sophisticated as him in terms of being as dodgy as Daniel Andrews. No, I'm not saying that she's not dodgy in the sense of politically dodgy, but she's not a smooth operator like Daniel Andrews. Say what you want about Daniel Andrews, but he was a very, very good political operator when it came to hiding scandals. I don't know if you guys remember the whole I don't recall saga that he had when he was being questioned by that commission that we had into the, the quarantine hotels. he's a very smooth operator, but Jacinta Allen, not so much. And you're seeing it play out. She does seem to be not that popular within parts of the Labour movement as well. And here we have the ABC putting some rigor behind the questions to her as well, because it's just so hard to hide the fact that there appears to be so much corruption within the Victorian state when it comes to these big build projects, when it comes to the CFMEU. It's so hard to hide it. It's ridiculous that it's not being properly, thoroughly investigated, and people aren't getting thrown in jail, at the very least being investigated. That's how bad this has become.
Now. That is not an answer to the question. I am puzzled why someone in your position who was in charge of the big build should not, in the event of this revelation of a very large amount of money, a huge cost to the Victorian taxpayer, that you wouldn't pose the question as to how much it really cost if you thought that wasn't the figure. Have you not asked the question?
Well, Sarah, we have absolutely acted quickly and strongly. And this is by taking the action to support Victoria Police, to give them additional powers, to go after this criminal behaviour.
Anyway, don't need to watch Jacinta Allen's BS. But I was very surprised, like I said.
The issues that face.
Very surprised that ABC actually went after her. So guys, let's go through the next few stories that I have as well. We'll try to be a bit quicker. And that is that Albanese eyes data center rules and AI copyright in a new national framework. Labor aims to shape AI revolution with new data center and AI copyright rules. Look at Albanese there. Australia will force data centers to minimize water use and fund their own power supply under mandatory national rules as Anthony Albanese moves to centralize oversight of artificial intelligence. The Prime Minister warned Australia had a narrow window to set AI social license, as he acknowledged gaps and risks in the current fragmented approach to technology in a major address at the University of Sydney on Wednesday. And I was paying attention to this speech. I watched it. Turns out he's an alumni of Sydney University. He studied economics at Sydney University, and he thanked them for his time there and what he learned in economics at Sydney University. I don't know if that's actually an endorsement for the university, considering what the fate that we find ourselves in Australia. Mr. Albanese also used the speech to give Australian musicians, writers and artists strong assurances they would maintain control over their work and get to name the price in any copyright deals with AI companies. Anything less is theft, he said. A lot of Australians would have those type of sentiments towards some of the changes that they've proposed to capital gains or the floating ideas like a death tax. We've been robbed by these guys. Speaking to 730, Mr. Albanese doubled down on his support for artists and said he was not worried Australians' copyright settings would prevent AI giants like Anthropic from investing in Australia. We're confident the advantages that Australia provides will see a significant investment here. So without going too much into this, Australia is trying to have a framework, a national framework that's agreed upon by, obviously federally, but the states are somewhat involved as well at a national cabinet level around how AI will be used in this country in regards to companies setting up infrastructure here, companies having access to the knowledge of Australia, I guess through, that's why they're talking about copyright, access to the creative works, the artistic works. Anthony Albanese wants to make sure that artists are getting paid for that if these companies want to use those type of assets to train AI models. Now, that's just one aspect of it. The other aspect is obviously around sovereignty as well. Surprisingly, I agree with Albanese on some of these aspects around sovereignty. We do need to have sovereignty when it comes to AI. It does involve a lot of foreign companies, Anthropic, the major companies, XAI, SpaceX, that are involved in this. Some of the Asian companies which are getting on board with this stuff as well. A lot of these companies are based in foreign countries, and then for them to be involved in, for instance, let's say defense capability, because that's one of the major breakthroughs with AI that's being used by the defense firms to help with either planning or using of their guidance systems or whatever it is. I'm just speaking very broadly here. Do you want a foreign company to have access to Australia in that regard? So I think it's good to have sovereignty around AI. It is becoming a massive deal. It's good to have standards in place that companies understand. I think all of these things are good points. The only issue here, the only red flag here, is that Australia is notoriously, when it comes to regulation, we over-regulate, right? And a part of that regulation, the government tries to strong-arm the tech companies. And I know the tech companies don't always listen. We're seeing that with this e-safety officer, for instance. They fight back against her because some of the regulation obviously harms the business practices and the profitability of these companies. But one of the things that Australia does really well is try to bully these tech companies to give backdoors into the Australian public in some regard. Now, I'm not saying for surveillance or spying, but I'm just saying just to control our lives, right? The government would like nothing more than to be like, you guys want to do your AI here? That's all well and fine, but we need you to be controlling Australians' access to this information in a way that the government shouldn't really be doing. You know what I'm trying to say? Like the Labor government might regulate a more woke AI, right? They might put the e-safety commissioner in charge of AI. I'm just throwing ideas out there based on what they've done in the past. But this is what we're more so worried about. Not the fact that there has to be a national framework. I think that's the smart thing to do. There needs to be sovereignty around this because obviously we're dealing with foreign companies having access to information in Australia. All that makes sense. The only issue is whether the governments here will take that for granted and use it in a way that we haven't really thought of right now, to intrude into our lives more, to control us more, right? And we have a track record of doing this. So that's what I'm worried about when I look at this topic. That's the fear that I have. I don't trust the Australian government to have the best interests of the Australian people when they're doing this. It's more around getting power for themselves. Let's have a listen to Albanese.
It's our time to decide what AI looks like here in Australia. No company should use Australian books, music, art or news to build or train AI without the artist's control. Our laws will spell that out, plain as day. Our Australian standards will also set clear rules for large data centres, where they are built and the power and water they use. We should not treat AI as a threat to good jobs. We must use it as an instrument to help create them. This is our time to decide what AI looks like here in Australia. No company should use Australian books, music, art or news to build or train AI without...
You get the picture. It hasn't really been, it's going to be workshopped and we're going to get legislation maybe next year or late this year. So that's when we'll know what the government actually sneaks in there. Because with all of this, I don't remember if you remember the misinformation bill, with all of these ideas that they have, they always sneak something else in. So when that comes out, everyone will be having a very close look at that legislation to see what the government's trying to slip through while they try to regulate AI in Australia. All right, let's get to the next story. On the same topic, really, and that's the UK that are looking at a social media ban for under 16s. Now, they've also come out and said that the UK social media ban, that 16 and 17-year-olds, so not just under 16s, but 16 and 17-year-olds will face curfews from midnight to 6 a.m., according to the government. So let's have a read of this article. Man, there's so much ads on the daily. This newspaper. 1 month after it was announced, the UK government has revealed its plans for the UK social media ban. While under 16s will be blocked from accessing social media platforms entirely, the government has now confirmed that 16 and 17-year-olds will face curfews. From midnight to 6 a.m. every night, their access to popular social media will be switched off. Features that are designed to keep teens scrolling for longer will also be switched off by default for older teenagers. This includes videos that automatically play and one after the other, and feeds that continuously serve up personalized content. Our constitution provided a clear message, provided a clear message for parents and teenagers alike. Even as young people gain greater independence at 16, they should still be protected from the most addictive online features that can have a harmful impact on their well-being, said Technology Secretary Liz Kendall. These measures will be crucial in helping young people get the sleep they need, focus on school and college, and spend more quality time with family and friends, all of which are fundamental to building a happy, healthy, and fulfilling adult life. So I won't read too much more into this, but you're seeing the scope of how these bans can be changed and, used in purposes and ways that we don't really understand or, think of at that time. Now, this is UK specific, but I can already see the government here thinking, hey, the UK is doing this. This sounds like an interesting thing. The e-Safety Commissioner coming out and she'll be like, why don't we put a curfew for 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds? And people might be sitting at home thinking, well, that's just for the teenagers, right? They're under 18. There needs to be some type, we don't let them drink, for instance, until they're 18. Things like this, right? They can't drive till a certain age. These are just kind of guardrails that we put in place for social media. I get those arguments. I get it. But can't you see the way that the government can introduce all these things that we never thought of? Could there be a curfew for the rest of us one day? I think it's possible. Could there be some sort of, digital credit type system, a social credit type system, which says, you know what, you haven't been a good citizen this month. We're going to cut your social media use off after 6 p.m. at night. You can't use it during the night time, or we're going to cut it off completely for this month. These are the incremental controls that this type of legislation actually invites to be created. It sets the groundwork for this type of changes to happen. And we're seeing that already in the UK. And again, we're seeing that with Australia as well, because we're talking about UK VPNs are not being banned, they're saying. But Australia is looking at this as well.
We also know that the Technology Secretary said there will be an announcement on VPNs, which is really important, in July. Are we going to hear about that?
So look, we've engaged very widely with families across the country on the question of VPNs. And one of the big things we heard was that many families feel VPNs are important to protect their privacy and their children. Whistleblowers told us the VPNs are important for them. Minority groups told us that the ability to use VPNs is a really important way in which they can call out for help when they need it. And so for those reasons, we have decided not to limit VPNs today. And that's the primary conclusion for now, but it is something we'll continue to review. We want to make sure that young people are safe on VPNs in particular, and so we'll work with the companies to make sure that's the case.
We also know that
they'll eventually come after the VPNs. You just, even in that language, you could hear him saying today, we'll keep considering this. Interestingly, they said migrant groups use VPNs. I mean, that might have saved the day for us. I think it's possible that could have happened. But Australia, this is an article from 2 days ago. Are VPNs under threat in Australia? Freedom of Information documents reveal plans to block age verification workarounds. The Australian e-Safety Commissioner expects tech companies to actively detect and block VPNs used to bypass online age restrictions. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Australia's internet watchdog is keeping a close eye on VPN services as the country steps up its efforts to enforce strict online age verification rules. According to documents obtained by The Guardian under Freedom of Information laws, the Australian e-Safety Commissioner expects tech platforms and services to provide actively block workarounds that allow users to bypass age-restricted content and social media bans. The internal documents explicitly detail how the government plans to approach these privacy tools under its unlawful material codes and standards. Under the codes, the documents state that service providers must take reasonable steps to prevent workarounds like VPN, so eSafety will look at this when considering compliance with codes. For everyday web users, this raises a troubling question. Could turning on a virtual private network to protect your personal data soon flag you as a circumventer? And that's what I'll end it there, but you can see already it's all kind of simmering. These bans are coming. I'm confident that the government is going to look at a way to make this harder and harder for us to be anonymous online, to have our digital ID linked to our online use. And the Trojan horse was this under 16 media ban. And you're seeing in Australia and around the world that they're discussing expansions of this. It's only a matter of time that this is going to become more and more normalized. And, the kids that are growing up under the under 16 social media ban, in the next 10 years, they would have grown up under this system, and they'll think it's completely normal for the government to regulate your lives, and they might even invite that in more and more, right? So this is what they're counting on. We have to be vigilant. We have to keep pushing back against this, because it's I think internet privacy, the internet freedom, is the battleground of the future. This is where we're using to communicate. There's been a lot of successes over the last few years, thanks in part to people like Elon Musk with the X platform. It's made other platforms a bit more liberal in terms of free speech, like Meta, for instance, Zuckerberg, and even YouTube to some respects have become a bit more liberal in their worldview when it comes to allowing different types of content. But these things can flip with the switch. They can change very quickly, and we've seen that. So that's one of the areas that we really need to keep a close eye on government, because this is where they really want to get control, is around internet freedom. The ability for us to have these type of news shows, to talk amongst ourselves, to take part in debates. They hate all of this. And in the UK, they're already trying to regulate YouTube to give people a certain algorithmic feed, which forces YouTube to show them things like mainstream media, BBC, and whatever. And it's crazy, right? It's crazy that to think that governments want this level of control over our lives, but this is what they want. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here. I had two other stories that I wanted to look at, but it's getting a bit late now. With the wrap up, we're going to look at if there's any more super chats, as well as if you have any questions. I'm going to be available for the next 10 minutes, so put your questions in. We'll bring them up on the chat screen. Let's have a look here. What's happening? Dr. Mangle says Israel wants to regulate all social media. I don't think so. Penny says young people don't know the concept of free speech. Noah says read the comments. Tate is an average fighter at best. This anti-Elon, I don't know why is there so much anger? I know you must be hate watching me. I'm just reading all your comments. Why are you hate watching me on a Wednesday night? You could be doing something else. Montana Miwa, thanks for jumping in on the show. I appreciate your patronage. Thank you. Ron as well. Ron, you hate watching as well. You don't have the Ozpil show to watch tonight. You guys don't have. Is Ozpil not live tonight? I watched. I saw he was watching my live during his live, with all the gropers and the all you folk were watching it. He's not available for you guys to watch tonight. Tracy says so scared for Australia. I agree, Tracy. It's worrying times definitely in Australia. Rose says everyone forgets who you were, and no one cares what you think. Thank you for coming to tell me, Rose. I think that's directed towards me. Yeah, thank you. All right, guys, 3 more minutes and I'm out of here. Hit me with any questions you have. Ron says, no, Rukshan, it's not hate watching to criticize your vile liberalism. Rook, have you watched any of Andrew Tate's past fights? I've watched like a long time ago. I watched like highlights of some of his fights. Do I think Tate's a good fighter? Maybe in his prime, maybe he was. These days, I don't think so. I recently saw Conor McGregor. He had a bit of an issue as well after a comeback. I think there's a prime time for a lot of these athletes when they're fighters. And Tate doesn't look like he's got it anymore. I could probably take him down. What do you reckon? How many jabs did you take? I think I'm on my 50th booster. Take every single booster I can take. How many views did Ozpil get? I don't know. I think there is obviously an audience for what Ozpil is doing for sure. I don't mind the guy. All I know is that he recently got mogged by Narendra Modi. He got mogged. Ozpil got mogged. Their protest got mogged by those Indian drummers at the Marvel Stadium. But props to advocating for their cause, but in the real world, he's getting mogged. Ospil, you're getting mogged, mate. You got mogged by Narendra Modi and you got mogged by the Indian drummers. I've seen the footage, bro. You got mogged. Environment says, I enjoy it, but you're obviously vaxxed, Rukshan. Am I obviously vaxxed, am I? Tracy, I appreciate it. Thanks for joining on the show. Rook, when's the next opposition show with Avi? That will be tomorrow morning. So guys, if you're watching, make sure you have subscribed to my channels, whether it's at Facebook or on YouTube or on X, where I'm streaming tonight. Hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. We can catch up then on the next show, which will be Monday night at 9 p.m. as well as then Wednesday at 9 p.m. So that's when I do Real Time with Rukshan. But tomorrow morning, you can join in the opposition show in the morning, 8:30 a.m. If Avi Yemeni gets up, we will do the opposition show tomorrow morning. Thanks for joining in, Dean. What's the go with the Oz alert? I didn't update my software and it's on there. This is the alert that went out. I think they're just testing the system, but I have seen people share conspiracies about it. Maybe we'll talk about that tomorrow morning on the opposition morning show. It's Salah, thank you. Great stream. Congrats on joining Rebel. Yep. Guys, go to rebelstore.com.au. You can buy merch like this. Look good wearing Rebel merchandise, or rebelsupport.com if you want to support what we do at Rebel News Australia. We appreciate that. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll fight Andrew Tate. I'm up for an exhibition boxing match. Let me know who I should fight in an exhibition boxing match. Maybe Avi and myself, we can fight each other. What about that? Are we too weak, and is it too late to respond to the rise of authoritarianism in Australia? I think things are skewed against people that are against things like authoritarianism. The way that the government set everything up, especially with these enclaves that they've got, these voters that they've got that are coming through, it's very hard to turn the tide. It's becoming harder and harder for sure. That's for a long conversation, that question, but thank you for the question. Could you do us all a favor and skip to self-delete? No. All right, guys. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you for joining with Real Time with Rukshan. I will see you guys tomorrow morning if you jump on at 8:30 a.m., the opposition morning show. Otherwise, next week on Monday at 9 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your week. Either way,